What's happening? Hey, I just want people to know, Chris, I know people on Twitter and social media. First of all, I did not cry myself to sleep last night. I'm not a fan of the Clippers. Just because I picked them to win and I was wrong doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. Sometimes I don't understand if people actually get, or do they think like, because you make a pick or because you pick against somebody else, you hate that person or that team or you're a fan of it. So I just want people to know, no, I'm not a Clippers fan. I don't have any gear. I've never been a Clippers fan, but I did pick them to win the championship, and they didn't do it. That's it.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. And, I was on the shows today, First Things First and Undisputed. So I felt the wrath of Nick Wright and Brandon Marshall on First Things First.
Which is fine. You know what I mean.
And then Shannon, of course, Skip and I felt the wrath on Undisputed. But yeah, I was thinking about, because you're right. I mean, like I said yesterday, we're not cheerleaders.
Right.
I've never been a Clippers fan. I mean, obviously we try to be objective generally, but you've never been a Clippers fan. But you do pull for the team, your picks. Because you want to be right?
We talk about it all the time.
And
that's
joke,
our job.
And we brag, and we bragging rights and all that. So
that's our job.
Right.
Is when we pick these things, you want to have some foresight. You want to be right. It's a big deal for analysts. That's what we do.
Right.
But we're wrong sometimes, and it's all right. Like I said, it's no skin off my apple. I've been right a lot. I've been wrong too. So
you've been wrong a lot too.
No, I said
don't make
wrong,
it. Don't make it better. I've been right a lot. I've been wrong
right
every now and then. You're wrong a lot too.
I've been right a lot.
Everybody's been right and everybody's been wrong, and it's all in fun. But yeah, hey, fans bring it. I heard that I was getting killed on social media. I haven't looked at it.
Were you?
That's what I hear. People been saying that to me.
And people are saying, Rob blocked me. Guys, this is what I don't understand.
Did you block some people today?
Yes, I did.
Oh, my God.
Here's my only thing.
I'm shocked, Rob, honestly, because you are obviously on this show. We go at it, all the time. Callers, some of them go at you. Some of them don't. We've been trash talked on our own show. You seem to be a guy that, somebody going at you or disagreeing doesn't bother you. So I'm surprised that you block people.
It's not about disagreeing with me if you were to make your case. It's when people try to tell you what you said and they have a false narrative that's going, Chris, that guy I can't get through to. Do you see what I'm saying? He has a false narrative. He's saying something that I never said. To that guy, I don't have any time for him. If you just have a criticism on my pick.
But you block a lot of people. That's what everybody that you block is creating a false narrative?
Yes. And here's the other part that, to me, I don't get. Then they go on my Instagram and say, unblock me. Why did you block me? If somebody blocked me, I'd leave it at that. I would go on my Instagram and then block me, right? If I block, why would you go on your Instagram and ask me to unblock you on Twitter?
I generally don't block people. What it is, Rob, the reason people do that is because there's something called, I call them Twitter muscles. Right. But it probably is more aptly defined as social media muscles, because I have never, and you know how it is when we go out, obviously people recognize you. They want to take pictures. And I've never, and I've been on TV now almost 20 years, national TV. Never one time of the thousands of people who have come up to me for a picture, obviously not many people ask for autographs anymore, but just whatever, to talk, whatever. Nobody has ripped me. Nobody has been rude, nothing. Right. And yet on Twitter, you got all these people killing you, right? But I never see any of them in public. So I'm sure that it's some of these guys, they got Twitter muscles, but if you ever see them in person, they want to be friendly. And one thing I don't respond to a lot of them, but a few times when I have, Rob, like if somebody says something and you go back at them, but now obviously you're conversing with them. Then they're like, hey, it's almost like they want to be cool now.
Right.
Because they got a dialogue
attention
with you. Right. And it's like almost like they were just trying to say something to get your attention. So now I really don't even respond because as you said, you're giving them more attention.
Right.
You might have a dude with 30 followers who rips you, and if you respond, now all of a sudden you're giving him a big platform that he normally wouldn't have. So that's kind of how I handle it.
Well, the Clippers didn't handle their big platform last night.
Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers go down meekly. Not only do they lose in the second round, but they lose a 3-1 lead. And on top of that, they had double-digit leads in each of the last 3 games, including last night. They were about 12 in the second quarter. And so here's the question I want to throw out to you, Rob. Does this change your view? I mean, and you said it I think it was about a week ago, week and a half ago. You said Kawhi Leonard is the best player in the world. Does this change your view of Kawhi Leonard? You're not necessarily going for, he's got years to rewrite his legacy or add to it or whatever. But for the time being, does this change your view of Kawhi Leonard?
Sure.
Because he was 6 for 22 with 14 points. None in the fourth quarter.
But he choked. It was a choke job. And it was as shocking as anything I've ever witnessed in sports.
Really?
And I've been covering sports for 35 years.
Wow. Him or the Clippers?
No, Kawhi.
Him or the
Kawhi.
Wow.
Kawhi.
Okay.
Because that's why they got him. Because he is a cool customer. Because he is a guy you could count on. He was the guy in Game 7 last year for Toronto that made the big shot to beat the 76ers. That's why you got him, Chris. That was the reason. And to not show up in the biggest game of the year is a choke job. And I'm not going to mince words does that mean that he can't play and negates everything that he's done in his career, or what will he do? No. And for all of the Laker fans celebrating, they have short memories when it comes to LeBron. Because if that's the case, we could have buried LeBron when they lost to Dallas and he melted down in that series, Chris, and said that was it for LeBron, right? But it wasn't it. He rebounded and won some championships after that terrible series against the Mavericks, which they should have won, or most people thought they should have won.
They should have won that.
And LeBron played poorly. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So to me, you got to be careful before you write somebody off. But he choked last night, and everything that they had put in their basket, and I'm not saying he has to be the almighty savior, Chris, and Paul George didn't do his part either. But the one guy, if you would have told me that 90% of the team wouldn't show up, the one guy I would be hard to believe wouldn't show up would have been Kawhi Leonard, and he didn't show up last night.
You're right. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And a few things. Number one, he is not the best player in the world. Would you agree with that, Rob, or are you still on that?
I said after that it's hard to make an argument for
right. The best player in the world is still LeBron James. I mean, let's look at the candidates. Giannis Antetokounmpo, obviously, is limitations in his game. Kawhi, great, obviously still a great player. Nobody's saying he's not great, but, he didn't deliver. Couldn't even get his team out of second round against an inferior opponent. Nikola Jokic, not there yet. Luka Doncic, James Harden. Harden did Harden-like things as they lost in the second round. LeBron James is still the best player in the world. We'll see if that ends up in the championship. But that's number one. Number two, like you said, Rob, Kawhi's 29 years old. His legacy is not written. Now, he's already got 2 championships, so he's a made man
and 2
to some
finals
degree.
MVPs. Right. He's got
But Magic Johnson had this moment. Tragic Johnson, they called him in 1984. Best point guard ever, dribbled out the clock. Think about that. Isaiah Thomas had his moment.
Had the ball stolen by Larry Bird.
Yep.
Famous call.
One of the top, in my book, the fourth best point guard ever. Larry Bird, first finals, Rob, he had an 8-point game, an 8-point game, and a 12-point game. Think about that. 3 games, 8, 8, 12.
And you would not believe that he's one of the greatest players ever.
So in LeBron, as you mentioned, 2011 against Dallas. So it happens. Will Kawhi, and I think we both believe he will, but will he learn from this and bounce back the way those guys did and become a stronger player? Now, here's what I have to say about his legacy. And it's, like I said, it's not set. But as I began to think about this, Rob, really closely, I looked at it and said, you know what? This is actually the first time, I believe, that Kawhi has had to carry the burden of expectations. And LeBron James has carried it basically his whole career. And I'm not trying to make this about LeBron, but that's just an example. This is the first time I believe Kawhi's really had to carry it as a favorite, as now we expect it from you. Now we're saying, heck, Colin Cowherd, our buddy, was saying he'd be a top 5 player of all time when they win it. And if you look at his first championship, yes, he was the finals MVP, but it wasn't his team. He didn't carry him. He was a role player. He averaged 13 points that year. It was Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker, and even Greg Popovich. That was the team. There was nothing expected of Kawhi. Yes, he was a great defender at that point and did a good job on LeBron, but anything he gave you was gravy. Toronto, he goes there. Nobody's expecting him to lead them to anything. Make the playoffs, you go deep. Nobody was expecting a championship, and he was great. I'm not taking anything away from what he did in the playoffs, but it was house money. It was like, nobody was saying they're going to win the East. They're going to win the championship. No one expected anything. And he went through some immature young guys in the East, the Philadelphia 76ers. We know how immature they are. Giannis, we know he wasn't ready. And then when he gets to the finals, again, not taking it away from him, but Rob, we nitpick with the greats. And Durant's hurt, and then Clay gets hurt. And so that is a great championship, no asterisks, but those were the facts. And this was the first time now he's coming in as the king or one of the kings. Him and LeBron and Giannis, he was on that level. We're expecting it from you, Kawhi. You're going to deliver. Most of us, right? You, me, most of the analysts, ex-players, most pick the Clippers. You got commercials now where you're saying, I'm the king of LA, right? You got a new shoe. Everything. You got the commercial where you say, oh, you know how it ends. All of that. Expectations. And he crumbled. Doesn't mean he'll crumble the rest of his career, but he crumbled under the weight of expectations, which I say was the first time in his career he really had to carry him. Because he's been kind of the underdog his whole career. San Diego State, low, not much of a ballyhoo draft pick. Role player with the superstars in San Antonio. No one expects anything in Toronto. And this was the first time he had to carry that weight, and it didn't end well.